Welcome back to Creative Excuses, everybody, where we make excuses to be creative out of the video games that we play. Today, the excuse again is Elder Scrolls Online, this time for some patch notes talk. Yesterday, the patch notes for ESO's Update 31, the Waking Flame Dungeon DLC, came out, and they're awesome. There are some super cool sets coming out, which I'll be talking about in separate videos. My plan right now is to make some theory crafting videos incorporating some of the new sets into theoretical untested builds because I don't have any room on my hard drive to install the PTS. Those will come out instead of my upcoming sorcerer and vampire builds because the changes this patch are too big to ignore and will make quite a few changes to the ways that my build will be structured. Because I make my builds on the live server and I don't do writs to pay for them, it's a better idea for me to plan these builds for the new patch because these changes they're big. I'd not planned on doing this, and I'm a little disappointed that I didn't get these builds out in time to feel relevant, at least for me. But oh well, we'll get them next time. So let's get into what I think are the most important and interesting changes in the entire patch. And that is the hybridization of the passives, specifically the armor passives. So they did this in alphabetical order, which is just unfortunate, but we're going to go over the medium armor passives and then the light armor passives they changed. So in medium armor, they changed agility. This used to give just weapon damage, and it would increase it by a percentage up to 14%, and now it's going to do weapon and spell damage, which is really big. The next one they changed is dexterity. This increases critical damage and healing done per piece worn up to 2% at the final rank, rather than weapon critical. So it's no longer going to give critical chance, it's going to give critical damage, which applies to both magicka and stamina skills. Now, the light armor passives that they changed are the contemporaries, the counterparts to the medium armor passives. And these are concentration, which used to give just spell penetration, and this was really important for endgame PvE. And now it's going to give offensive penetration, so it's weapon and spell penetration. The next one they changed was Prodigy, which now grants equal critical chance, rather than just spell critical. So this is going to increase your weapon and your spell critical. Now there are obviously some other changes here, and we'll go over a few of those here in a few minutes. But before we get into that, let's talk about these armor passive changes. The changes here are insane and give a further indication that ZOS is moving towards even more hybrid-friendly build paths. I expect the next patch after this, with the Zone DLC coming out around November, if it's anything like Markarth last year, that they'll make a huge pass over all of the armor sets in the game and change their armor weighting so that some magicka sets are medium and some stamina sets are light armor. I think this would do wonders for build diversity, while also allowing some pretty wild combinations to come out. But let's talk about the passives themselves and what they actually do. So for the medium armor passives, these look like they primarily affect PvP. As far as PvP armors go, medium is far superior to light because it does not take any additional damage from any sources, and it increases weapon damage, which allows proc sets to scale higher. Light armor's penetration stat in the live patch was good, but stamina builds with a two-hander still had access to even more penetration in a burst combo if they used the onslaught ability from the two-hander skill line. And on top of this, light armor takes more damage from martial and stamina sources, while already having lower resistances. So they're just taking way more damage than they have to, so a lot of times magicka builds end up using heavy armor. All of this put together in the live patch right now means that light armor and thus magicka builds are generally underperforming compared to stamina builds based just on the passives. Now, with these changes, magicka builds can inherit almost all of the benefits of medium armor passives. They get extra spell damage and extra sprint speed, which are going to be important in PvP, on top of improved sneak. These are big. On top of this, the dexterity change, removing the crit chance and adding crit damage, will benefit PvP because of the prevalence of mechanical acuity as a burst set on the back bar. That extra 14% crit damage will give more value to mechanical acuity's burst potential in PvP. This change is big in PvP, I think. Not so much in PvE. We'll see. On the other hand, the light armor changes are also really interesting, giving stamina builds access to a bunch of penetration through wearing light armor pieces either on their monster set or through a crafted set, alleviates that issue for endgame PvE players while still giving access to the crit that endgame players crave so badly. This change is also beneficial for solo players, as the two strongest PvE stats are now on the same armor type for both styles, crit and penetration. This means for hybrids specifically, light armor is going to allow significantly more damage because you're getting your two best stats from the same armor type. So if you're a hybrid build, wear a light armor, a light crafted set. It's pretty simple now. And I would not be surprised if we start to see a lot more hybrid builds out there during this patch for both solo and group play. This isn't without a problem though. There is still an issue. And that's that they didn't update the Windwalker passive right here and the Evocation passive over here. So this puts stamina builds that use light armor at a severe sustain disadvantage because they're not inheriting cost reduction. The lack of cost reduction for stamina skills will probably still limit the use of stamina builds in the endgame, especially considering there are fewer stamina sets for stamina sustain sets for supports to wear. We'll see how that plays out when the big guys start making their 100k parse builds and when they start making raid comps. But I don't see that happening. I don't see stamina becoming super popular just yet because the sustain issue. The opposite problem applies to mages in PvP. They are at a sustain disadvantage for their offensive stats compared to stamina builds because they don't get the cost reduction. So they'll be less efficient than stamina builds still, at least on that front. This won't be much of a problem for PvP builds though, because I think they generally have more sustain in their builds than a PvE build does. But it is something to think about. I do think ZOS has time to fix this, preferably by making one of the armor sets about cost reduction and the other about recovery. So you take the stats that are on those two passives and you split them up. By this, I mean give light armor like a 4% cost reduction for magicka and stamina abilities each per piece of light armor worn, but no recovery bonus, and give medium armor an 8% bonus to magicka and stamina recovery per piece worn. You just double the bonuses since you're splitting them up. That's kind of the idea. I think recovery will be more useful than cost reduction in PvP, and cost reduction will be basically as good as recovery in PvE. Basically, light armor becomes the PvE armor, and medium armor a PvP armor. And then heavy is just, it's heavy. It does what it wants, where it wants, it just deals a little bit less damage than the other two options. Now, to give a quick idea of how I think this is going to most dramatically change things, I think for stamina builds, the two most popular sets are about to be New Moon Acolyte, if there is a cost reduction change, which there definitely should be, and Diamond's Victory, with Hunting's Rage making a nice return to the meta as well. These three are all crafted sets, meaning they can be made as light armor sets and be worn as 5 pieces on the body, which means that they'll get the penetration bonus from concentration, which is going to be big, and Prodigy, giving them that critical chance that they want. I expect it's going to be a really popular combination for those who have access to Reliquin, because Reliquin is still going to be a ridiculously popular set. Another prediction is that if there's not a change to the recovery passives for light and medium armor, stamina builds still won't be the meta for endgame group comps, but there could be hybrid builds and hybrid comps. Specifically, Maelstrom backbar staves on stamina builds have become somewhat popular, and they're getting more popular. So I think this will continue, because if you're using New Moon Acolyte or you're using Diamond's Victory, having that magicka damage is going to get, or you're getting magicka stats, so you're going to have that damage boosted. So there's more benefit in using that skill and weapon set. And I think they could also end up using more magicka skills, potentially more damaging magicka skills, like damage over times and everything, for stamina builds, while they leave their spammables maybe as a stamina spammable from the weapon or, class skill line or whatever. This is because their penetration and crit stats will be the same for magicka and stamina, depending on their stats, of course, while they'll get a big stamina sustain benefit from using more magicka dots more magic damage over time skills, and other skills. Overall, these changes I think are going to make some absolutely wild builds meta, and I'm excited to see what people come up with. The last changes that I want to look at really quick are from the Fighters Guild passives, and one of the abilities actually, and that's Slayer, which now gives weapon and spell damage instead of just spell or just weapon damage. This one's going to be big for hybrids, I think, because it means slotting like Camo Hunter from the Fighters Guild skill line is going to be really valuable, even for a hybrid build. And it could be more valuable on a hybrid build than, say, Inner Light from the Mages Guild. The next one is Flawless Dawnbreaker now grants equal weapon and spell damage values. So it's going to give 300 weapon damage and 300 spell damage. Again, this is a benefit for hybrids. So hybrids can now slot this, get extra spell damage here and weapon damage here. And then when they actually use the ultimate, they'll get that bonus again. I think that's pretty impactful, and I expect we'll see it on some hybrid builds. I might even use this on some of my hybrid builds. But that's going to wrap it up for me for this video. I'm super excited to see where this patch is going and where the game is going from here. I really love hybrid builds and off-meta builds, so this is going to be pretty fun. Hybridizing things could make the game a lot more interesting and increase build diversity significantly. So I really am excited. But we'll see. We will see what happens. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos, either theory crafting, running through a dungeon, or whatever else. All right, everybody, I will see you guys in the next excuse.